So I've taken a little time to digest the game that finished Brighton 2, Forest 2. There's a few interesting things I want to get discussing with you guys. So welcome to my match reaction for Brighton 2, Forest 2. Good morning, good evening, or good night. Hope you guys are doing well, and welcome to my match reaction from the game yesterday, where it finished Brighton 2, Forest 2. There's a lot of talking points we need to address on this game. Now that I have a time to watch it back, be all level-headed about it, there's a few discussion points that need to be had. So if you're enjoying the content, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new, and remember you've only got until 7:30 tonight to get the last few tickets for this signed framed Chris Wood shirt. You can also get an Insta prize win of Callum Hudson-Odoi, Matt Sells, and Nuno as well. So scan this QR code or click on the link that's pinned in the comment. Okay, so let's get into this. And obviously in the player ratings, we kind of dissected and talked through it play by play. There's a couple of things that I will address in a bit more detail, but I want to start by looking at some positives and negatives. I think after any performance, whatever the result, you can always take positives and improvement points. For me, clearly the positive is that we are still unbeaten. It's the first time we've been behind in any game in the Premier League this season. And we showed enough resolve and fight to get ourselves back in it and at least get level. I think we could have gone on and won it had Jota played Sosa through a little earlier and Sosa decided to shoot, but it's all ifs, buts, and maybes. But at the same time, I do start to worry about this unbeaten streak. Is this going to be something that is just held over the players a bit too much? Is it going to get to the stage where we may be drawing in a game in a couple of weeks' time? Let's say this unbeaten run continues, and instead of going for a win, we kind of start to worry about protecting our unbeaten record. I seem to remember, I think it was Manchester United had this away unbeaten record going on back in the COVID days. And that was like the be all and end all. And honestly speaking, I don't mind if Forest lose. Look, if Forest were to lose one game and win the next two, I'd prefer that to, 2 draws and a win, because we'd end up with one more point. For me, it's all about the points. Yes, it's nice to say we're undefeated. Yes, it's nice to kind of puff my chest out when I'm talking to the other YouTubers and my friends and everything. But pragmatically, it's not always the best case scenario. So I see it as a major positive, obviously. But I do just worry down the road. Are we start going to take this thing and try and keep flashing it up in, bright neon lights and what have you? So that's one thing there. The other thing I thought was extremely positive was Nuno's substitutions and the fact he did them at half time, because Forest was starting to fall apart in those last 5 minutes of the first half. And then he just decided, right, let's make some wholesale changes. And I think this shows an evolution of Nuno and where he is in his stature at the club right now. His word is final, his decisions are final, and he will make them when he wants. And that for me is a good sign. Now, do I think those 3 substitutions that he brought on, Nico Williams-Yates, and who was the other one that came on? It was Silva. Did they change the complexion of the game at all? No, because if you look at it and what happened in those first 10-15 minutes of the second half, Brighton was still in the ascendancy and Forest was still on the back foot. But this brings me on to another positive. It's 60 minutes into the game now instead of 66 or 70, wherever he normally averages. He then goes and brings on Sosa for Anderson. Now, Anderson, I thought, did quite well yesterday, maybe a little anonymous at times, but it showed again another positive intent from Nuno because he knew we had to go and chase the game. So I see that as positives. Something we've gone and harped on a lot about Nuno, as much as we've backed him, is his substitutions. They haven't been great. However, what I will say to counter that is every single fan base I speak to right now seems to complain about their manager and their poor substitutions or their poor timing of substitutions. Heard it from the Leicester fans, from the Everton fans, from the West Ham fans. All these different fan bases are saying the same thing. So we're not alone or unique in it, but where we differ is that Nuno is addressing it. So positives to take from that. The negatives for me of the game was that period from 40 minutes to about 65, 70 minutes. where we just seemed lost, where I think the thing that highlighted it for me was when Danny Welbeck decided he suddenly had the ability to dance between 4 or 5 of our players and then miss his shot because he's crap, or should I say Sells made a decent save in that instant. So that worried me. It just felt like we'd lost our composure. All the practicing and training and drilling they had done that we saw in the Liverpool match suddenly participated in that little period. And I do worry what will be like under pressure, maybe further down the season, if we're either fighting for Europe, or some might think we're still going to be fighting, against relegation. Whatever those pressure scenarios are, how are the players going to cope with it? That has got me slightly worried. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the goalkeepers and Sells. I've made no secrets that Sells for me isn't the first choice. I don't think he's a bad keeper, but I don't think he's that next level keeper, is the best way I can describe it. Nor am I going to sit here and say that Miguel is the second coming of Samba or anything like that. But I think Miguel has something different about him. Miguel wants to play for Forest. Miguel got his spot at Corinthians after they lost their long-standing keeper when he left, and he still decided to leave Forest. He is hungry and fired up to try and break into the Premier League. And he is quite young at 24, 25 years old. And I think we need to try him out. I think he needs to be given a couple of games. Because the other frustration for me is Sells' kicking. It's just always long ball FC with him. Has to be an instruction. But with Miguel having weaker long kicks, maybe we will see us playing out the back. And I feel that we're getting close to that stage where we're going to need to start playing out the back. If we're going to be respected, if we're going to maybe look to progress higher up this table, we have to start building from the back and not just going for some of these long balls. And I'm not saying we're long ball FC in general, but there's a clear tendency whenever it goes back to Sells that seems to be the instruction. So I'm up for trying Miguel, but I still harp back to Kelleher for me. We should have gone in for him. We just haven't got that clear defined number one. So Miguel needs to be given a chance to try it between the sticks to see if he is that second coming of Brice Samba or whoever else you think it should be. So that keeper position is a little bit of a worry for me. And the other one is up front. I know Chris Wood got his goal, but in this transitional style play we're doing right now, he is struggling to keep up with the attacking three in the transition when we're going forward. And I think if we had a dynamic pace merchant striker up front who could be there, it could work quite well. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. And then the other thing I want to talk about is obviously the incident with Morgan Gibbs-White. Look, was it a yellow? I don't think it was. At some point there has to be physical contact in football. We know Rob Jones has an agenda against Forest. Anthony Taylor's the one who was reffing the match when we should have had those 3 penalties against Everton last season. So we know all the conspiracies. But with Morgan Gibbs-White out, there's 2 things I want to say. When he dropped back in the 8, I felt he played really well because he suddenly could look up and he would see that he had Callum Hudson-Odoi to his left, Jota and Sosa to his middle and to his right. And he had 3 people he could flow into, passes, etc. And we saw that in the creation of our second goal. And that's because he's deeper with more players in front of him, which means he becomes more influential in the game. So I am now more and more convinced that Morgan Gibbs-White should start as an 8 rather than as a 10 and influence that game from there. Because his work rates as well are one of a really strong midfielder as well. I think it needs, again, a couple of games in there to see what he's like. Every time he's played in that 8 position, I've been impressed with what he's done. And on the flip side, now he's suspended, I think that opens up a few claims for that number 10 spot. He will be out for, I believe it's 1 game when you get double yellow carded. It's an automatic suspension that you can't appeal. So that opens up the possibility of the number 10 for 2 people. Either Anderson, who thinks he's a number 10, or for me, and my preference would be Jota Silva, because I think he can play as a number 10 and he looks more like a number 10. We'll cover this off as we get closer to the Fulham game, but already I'm thinking about Anderson and Ward-Prowse in the 6 and the 8, Hudson-Odoi on the left, Jota in the 10, and then Sosa on the right-hand side with, I don't know who up front, I guess Chris Wood. But already these ideas are starting to flow in my head. And we should see in Jota and Sosa 2 individuals who should be brimming on the edge to get into this Forest team, because they know they need to prove themselves to get themselves ahead of the likes of Elanga, Hudson-Odoi, Morgan Gibbs-White, whatever it is, for the positions they're trying to get into. So I think there's more positives to take away than negatives. But I will say that was a warning sign. That could have gone really badly wrong yesterday. But the main thing is it didn't. And I'm sure Nuno will take away those positives and negatives and address them ready in time for the Fulham game. But get your thoughts in on everything I've just said there. We'll have a couple of further videos out on Patreon as well, exclusive for the Patreon members. So look out for those. They are coming your way very shortly as well. If you've enjoyed the content and haven't already, please don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new. And we'll see you tonight on Grumpy Old Reds at 8:30. Come on, you Reds.